Hello YouTube, Ruth Basque here with another video. So we started part 1 of prophecy a while back, so we're going to go into part 2 of prophecy, and I'm trying to remember where I left off, but I'm sure I will get there. I have the lovely prophecy here with me today. She's all a little late for St. Patrick's Day, but yeah, next year she'll be wearing this a lot. So where we left off was when she had said goodbye to Vlad, but we're going to go and take a step back a bit because I decided I wanted to add more into that before I went to what happens with him. So we're going to take up with the days before he shipped out to do his recon on the rim, on the outer rims. And during those days and months, she and Vlad had spent a lot of time together before he had to ship out for the first time. She didn't get to spend much time with Sassy because Sassy was busy studying her shamanic medicine woman teachings on her home planet. So her and Vlad were seen everywhere. They were seen on Prophecy's planet. They were seen on his planet. He even took her with him sometimes when he did closer to the planets, their home planets recon, to make sure that everything was okay. They spent so much time together that they had decided, when he proposed to her, just before the beginning of the new semester for her college courses, she accepted and said yes. In between these months and times, she did a lot of studying in her classroom on computer programming and repairs, and she excelled so quickly in that she actually finished ahead of her classmates and was able to take an early time off. It was during this time that she went on one of the last recons she would with Vlad. They were to be married the next month. So she went on him for the last time, and they stopped and checked out several of the comets underneath the beautiful space skies and the stars above them. They went to his planet several times for official meetings. They spent a lot of time on the Dark Knight Station studying for the next semester. And then he got a call that he needed to go to the Outer Rims for the first time. Prophecy, being a prophet and being able to see things before they happen, or sometimes knowing something was going to happen but not being able to see exactly what it was, begged him to be totally careful, to watch everything around him and be aware of his surroundings. She was worried something really bad was going to happen to him, and she's afraid that she wouldn't see him again if she didn't warn him in advance. As he left with his crew to do the Outer Rim recons, she went back to class and lost herself in her work. The following week, there was a report in from the recon as most of them came back. 2 had died and 1 was lost. She had heard this, and she was worried, didn't know which ones had died or had been lost. She quickly ran to the chambers where the crews were at and asked their leader where Vlad was. They looked at her and said, "Vlad is missing. We don't know. He went down on one of the moons out there. We're going to send another crew back out, but we need to restock on fuel and stuff before we go." Prophecy wanted to go with him. She felt she could help them find him, but they told her no. She was only a girl and needed to stay behind. Which unladylike language was used them about her being a woman, she told them, was pure, she told them, and that if she wanted to go and join the force and fly on recon, she would, told them, do it. Never has she used language like that before, but she was very upset with him. Eventually she agreed, and she stayed behind. So for the next 3-4 days, while they were on recon trying to find those that had lost, they found the 2 bodies of the ones that had crashed and died. They were not well known amongst the station. Vlad was one of the most popular ones. That night, as she was sleeping in her bed, she had a dream. She knew where he was at, and she knew he was alive. She woke up to go and tell the captain of the station what she knew, but instead decided to do it herself. So using her third eye, She opened up a portal to the exact spot where Vlad was at, and she stepped through it. She walked around on this moon for a bit, as it seemed to have plenty of oxygen and she didn't need a spacesuit for it. And then she found his fighter jet. It was torn apart and had been burned through and out. There he was laying up against a rock. He wasn't moving. He was battered and bruised and had been bleeding. And he wasn't moving, and she was afraid he was dead. She ran to him real quick and discovered that he wasn't dead. She gave him some water because he was awfully thirsty. She lifted him up onto his feet as best she could. Then, using her third eye, she opened a porthole back to the Black Knight station, and they stepped out into the emergency room. Everyone in the room stared at her, their mouths dropped open. Her mother, who was in there talking to the head nurse, asked her, "When did you learn to do that?" And Prophecy blushed and said, "I've been doing it since I was 5, Mom." Of course, this blew everyone's mind because very few of her people can actually do that. The third eye on Prophecy was mostly known to help with her people, was known only for prophecy, for seeing things into the future and for being able to see things that had happened in the past, to know when danger was nearby and to know when it was going to be coming. None had ever used it to open a porthole for a long time. The only one who had been able to do this, or the only two who had been able to do this since Prophecy, was her great-great-great-great-great-grandmother, who had ascended not too long ago. The other one was the leader of her tribe. This woman had not come out of her sleep for a long time. She'd been sleeping for over 1,000 years. Some wondered if she'd ever wake up and choose to ascend, or she would remain in her sleep and rest. No one was able to talk to this elder woman. She was the oldest of her people and had been amongst them for a very long time. Prophecy's concerns for Vlad grew, though, as his breathing was very heavy, and he didn't seem to respond to much, and he kept mumbling over and over again, "They're going to kill us. They're going to kill us all." Every time he said it, all Prophecy could see was this blurred figure of what she assumed were the Ravengers. The ship had not moved very far into the galaxy since it had showed up the year prior, and so Prophecy didn't really know exactly what this ship looked like. But now it was sending out its own recon fleets, and these fleets were intent on taking out all the moons for all the elements they needed: the copper, the gold, the silver, water, gas, everything that was held within these small moons to help fuel their own ship. And by stripping these small planets that were lifeless planets and didn't have any life on it, had now started a cascading effect. Because they had to split these moons apart to get to the needed ores, a lot of the chunks would fly through the solar system and start hitting other moons. And sometimes, and on occasion, Zombawi would get hit. Zombawi is a planet much like Earth. Green trees, sparkling waters, very happy and peaceful people who were very scientifically inclined and worked with the elements around them. They were a loving people and cared for everybody. And the trade with the Zombawis was a big trade. Their trade was the most trade for the station. They would send the Zombawis all the needed products they needed to continue their research, and Zombawi would send them back the needed supplies for their survival: foods, water, medicines. A lot of the Zombawi children also went to the college where Prophecy was at. Prophecy had become friends with one of these, and very close friends, because much like Prophecy, she was also studying computers, as well as science and medicine. Her name was Zoe. Zoe and her became fast friends. One day, as they were talking outside the hospital lab area, Prophecy got news that Vlad was healed and ready to, could be checked out now. She went to greet him there and to help him back into his recon jet, so that his new recon jet, so he could go home for a while and rest. They had told him that he would not be leaving and to going back on recon now for at least 3 years. This meant that Prophecy and Vlad would have 3 years together before tragedy struck. 3 years would seem like a long time, but in essence, it was pretty much short when you think of it. In the days and months that followed, Prophecy and Vlad did marry. They became husband and wife and settled on the Dark Knight station. They set up a home there. Vlad began taking instructions of flight and control while she studied computers. Oftentimes, she'd have to repair the computers on his new flying jet. And oftentimes, she only worked in the main section computer area. They saw each other a lot. And as the time grew near, when things would change for good, 2.5 years into their marriage, the Ravengers hit Zimbabwe. Zoe was there. She was in the lab and experimenting with some germs that had been found on her planet. She was trying to find a cure for one that was extremely dangerous to her people. During that time, her mom and dad were there, and everybody in the lab had locked it down to make sure that no viruses would escape while they were trying to find a cure for this virus. When the first missile hit Zimbabwe, it released a virus that nobody was prepared for, and because of this, Zimbabwe was cut off from the rest of the galaxy. No one would be allowed to land on or go near Zimbabwe as the zombie plague spread across the planet. Zoe had found a way to cure the zombie plague, but only to a certain extent. And only to the people in the lab was she able to minister this cure. She gave them what they needed, but their skin remained looking discolored and dead-like. But their brains became more human, and they gained control of their faculties. They were trying to find a way to give everybody on the planet this cure. Prophecy, at this point, discovered that she was pregnant. She was going to have a baby. Her and Vlad were happy about it. Now that the 3-year period was almost at the end when he can go back on recon, he asked to have another couple of years before going. He wanted to be with Prophecy when she gave birth. Zimbabwe had been asking for help, but since nobody was allowed to go onto the planet, nobody could bring them what they needed. Vlad came up with a way of doing it. He took his battalion and they flew over Zimbabwe. They opened up the back of the spaceships and dropped the supplies that were needed down onto the planet. The Zimbabweans then in the lab would send people out to pick up the supplies and bring them back to the lab. This was the only way they would ever be able to help Zimbabwe for now. But the big concern was coming quick and faster than anybody thought. Within the next couple of years, things would turn from bad to worse, and more of the planets would become destroyed by the Ravengers. They had moved in further now, and they were very much aware of. Skirmishes broke out all over the place. Fighter jets were shooting their jets out. Their jets were shooting the galaxy jets down. A lot of the people were dying in this battle, a battle that would last for a very long time. Prophecy grew in her size with her young child that she'd be giving birth to, and Vlad was there the whole time. On the day her baby was born, little Rella was born October 31st in the year 2424 in the galaxy of the Helix Nebula. There she would live for 5 years before everything in her life was shattered apart. So that's part 2. I hope you guys liked part 2. If you do, please leave comments below. Remember to hit link and hit subscribe and hit that bell so you get notified. And I will be back as soon as I can again with part 3. Tonight was easy to do. I got the whole house to myself. Nobody was here. Chris was at work. His mom spent the night at a friend's. So this was a great time to do part 2 of Prophecy. So remember, have fun, carry a smart doll.